So I'm going to tell you 3 stories and what those stories might mean for long-tail revenue streams for publishers. But before I tell the 3 stories, I think we should notice something cool that happened in the room today. When I started PubGet with 2 other guys in 2008, a lot of this was theoretical. Entity extraction as a way of driving new revenue to publishers was theoretical. Being able to create a social graph by tracking end-user activity the way that Mendeley does was theoretical. And doing text mining in order to drive highly targeted ads in the STM space was also theoretical, like Skrausel's doing. All 3 are generating revenue doing that right now. That's super cool. And I'm pleased to be up here with them. So I will have a different pitch than the rest of the folks. I only have maybe 1 or 2 product slides. The rest is me regurgitating what I've seen in the marketplace, meeting with libraries around the world for the last 4 years. And what PubGet thinks this means for the publishing industry and how you can change the way you monetize your content. A quick footnote, why do I meet with these libraries? What does PubGet do? What is PubGet? When we founded PubGet in 2008, it was around the idea that search was a relatively well-solved problem in STM. The problem in STM was content management, or content access. So 10 million research scientists, Mendeley has 2 million of them, that sort of ballpark figure, millions and millions of folks that are accelerating the cures for disease around the world could search and discover citations just fine. They had trouble getting through link resolvers, authentication systems, paywalls, different publisher sites, et cetera, to actually get the content. That's what PubGet does. We're a workflow tool to solve that problem. We have 2 businesses. One's an advertising business for our free tool, but the core of our business is an enterprise-grade workflow tool to make full text access easier. That's the end of the product pitch. What are we seeing in the market? There are 3 stories. First is enterprises are getting dumber. Second, content access is becoming increasingly chaotic. Third, library roles are shifting because of those 2 things. And fourth, therefore, your monetization strategy has to shift, and where can you find this long-tail revenue in order to backfill some of those lost revenues because of the changes. All right? So we're going to do those 3 stories, and then a quick food for thought recommendation on how you can take advantage of this industry change. Enterprises are getting dumber. That's what this slide shows. R&D spend as a percentage of revenue in the pharmaceutical industry is shrinking. To me, that means those enterprises are getting dumber. They're investing less in research, they're investing less in content, they're investing less in libraries. That not only shows up in the aggregate with this slide as the share declines as we head out to 2015, but it also shows up in this number. This is Merck's revenue for 2011, $48 billion, $47 million. I grew up in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, which is 2 miles away from Merck's U.S. headquarters. At their U.S. headquarters, they have 6 librarians. $48 billion supported by 6 librarians. That's a big change in history. They used to have 10 times that amount. And so that means the folks that are responsible for helping you monetize your content are under attack. Because they're under attack, and because end users want to take more responsibility for accessing the content by themselves, either using stuff like PubGet's free tool or Google Scholar or Mendeley and what have you, the way that users access this content is becoming fragmented and chaotic. Here's numeric evidence of that. These are 4 PubGet customers, and we're able to track the ISSNs that those 4 customers access. This is kind of like a dumbed-down version of what Jan showed. Jan showed very sophisticated ways of tracking end-user behavior. We don't need that level of sophistication here. What we need here is to show the difference between pharmaceutical company D that's using almost all document delivery for their content access, right? What is that? 80% of the ISSNs that were accessed at that enterprise were accessed via document delivery. Where you look at Pharma B, the majority of their content access is through subscriptions. And so libraries are all over the map in terms of how they're provisioning content services to users. And therefore, your reliable revenue stream, that head content, that annual subscription license, is all over the map too. Okay. Enterprises are getting dumber. Story 2 is that content consumption is getting more chaotic from a wider variety of places. Story 3 is that library roles are shifting. So as headcount is reduced to the library, as end users turn to Google Scholar and self-serve applications to get content, as end users expect to have to buy content or ask colleagues for it, as opposed to getting it through a subscription, libraries are having to focus on other stuff to remain relevant. End users go to the content themselves, they're not going to the library. What does the library do? We're seeing the libraries doing 3 things. They're either turning into consultants and helping do the research themselves and spitting out a synthesized answer. They're working as content managers, trying to control the chaotic content access across their network. Or they're just focused on analytics. Jan's slide about 85% of content decisions were based on cost per view. Absolutely. And a bunch of for example, at Merck, one of those 6 librarians is basically just focused on content analytics, making sure that they load balance between DocDel and subscription. Okay. That's scary. So instead of a library buying an annual content license from a publisher and then being the distributor of that content, now that librarian is just focused on wringing the last dollar out of the publisher. Okay, so those 3 things make monetization in 2012 potentially scary. Those 3 things mean that publishers have to shift from head-oriented content monetization to tail-oriented content monetization. So head means traditional annual subscription licenses to serials. Tail means many other things that we'll get into in a second. The good news is that the digital platforms that you heard from today all help you shift to this tail content. Right? Quick story, I started my career in the cable industry, not in FCM publishing. And I was a consultant in the cable industry, and I was talking to a CEO who will be nameless at a big monopolistic cable provider. And we saw Verizon coming into their territory and was threatening to take their customers away. And we were trying to sell them consulting services about how to fight back. And this guy was a text, and he said, "Ryan, I'm too busy sweeping nickels up off the street to use your services." Now, I thought that was a derogatory thing to say, but that's a good thing. And he knew more than I did at the time that using digital technology and through his on-demand services through pay-per-view, that he could sweep nickels up off the street and have a darn good business. And that's what I encourage scholarly publishers to think about, that it's okay to think about sweeping nickels up off the street. It's okay to think about small transactions because they add up to be big business. So, how do you do that? We heard from Scrazzle, we heard from Temis about 2 potential ways to do that with better recommendations, with inserted advertising, and that's the curve that we promote as well. So in addition to the core subscription business, we talk about transitioning to pay-per-view, to rights transactions, and to advertising. Quick footnote, PubGet was acquired by the Copyright Clearance Center at the end of 2011. It was a happy surprise for us, and it's been a great relationship really to do this. Really to help the Copyright Clearance Center, help the publishing community do more transactional business. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like here's a screenshot of PubGet, but this could be any aggregator. This could be any workflow tool. Next to every one of these is a buy PDF. 1 click, credit card number, you're done. You have aggregators start to do the transactions for you. So that's one way to skin that cat. The second way is, particularly when you talk about open access articles, the way to monetize open access starts to move down that curve towards rights transactions. So if folks want to reuse that paper in a presentation, if folks want to reuse that paper in a company-wide correspondence or republish data from that paper, PubGet creates a link that allows users to see exactly what they're able to do with that piece of content in a clear red light, green light sort of interface. And if they can't do it, they can buy the rights to do it. So long tail transactions. These rights are sometimes expensive in the thousands of dollars, but sometimes they're in the tens of dollars. And you have a digital platform that can allow you to broadly distribute rights on a transactional basis. That's sweeping nickels up off the street. And then finally, advertising. I think Scrazzle and David did an awesome job talking about where that's headed. We have a contextual ad platform too. It's slightly different in that it generates revenue for PubGet as a distribution mechanism for publisher content. But the other way to do it is to be a platform for inside the publishers like we saw with Reed Elsevier and Science Direct. So where does that leave us? I told 3 stories. One is that there's a change in the enterprise landscape. Enterprises are getting dumber, and so that's a threat to head revenue. Library roles are changing, more focused on optimizing content spend. That's a threat to head revenue. And content is becoming more chaotic in the way it's consumed through many more channels, also a threat to head revenue. But we can fix that with technology and go after the tail revenue by going after pay-per-view rights transactions and advertising. PubGet and Copyright Clearance Center can help you with that, as can the presentations that you saw before I got up here. Thanks.